Hello, everyone. I'm Pastor Sarah Stobie, and this is week 47 of our Biblical Lit series. Thank you for continuing to join me in this journey. Week 47, we are wrapping up Acts and we're reading the entire book of Romans. So, Acts 20 through Romans 16, which is its last chapter. As we're going through all this, it is so hard for me to do a short, because I'm trying to make these very short, concise words as you are reading through these and to highlight something because we're literally reading through dozens of years here of history and teaching. So it's just really hard. So this week we're wrapping up Acts 20 through. I talked about Acts in our last vlog, and this week I want to talk a little bit about Romans. I'm going to talk a little bit in general about Romans, and then I'm going to lift up one sentence in Romans that, as I was reading this, just stuck with me, and I underlined it and highlighted it, and I'm thinking about it even today. So, Romans. Romans is the letter written by Paul to the Romans, the Roman Church. And I know that when we think of Rome, we think of the Vatican and we think of the Pope and the large group of people. The Roman Church was obviously not that big. And you can look this up in history. You can Google it, I'm sure, and hear a little bit more about the Roman Church that Paul was writing to, and Paul's history with Rome and how being imprisoned in Rome under house arrest and of course eventually dying in Rome. So it's just too much to cover. But this letter to Romans really is the theology doctrine of the Christian faith. Paul writes just beautiful things in here, and you could take each chapter and make one individual vlog. And actually, some of these chapters you could make into thirds and make individual vlogs. The hard thing that I have heard, though, as people are reading through Romans, especially in one sitting, is that it's just really difficult to read and it reads like a legal document. And that's because that's how Paul wrote it. Paul had been trained in the law. Paul had been trained in rhetoric and how to debate. And so the letter to the Romans is in that language. It is in that debate style, that rhetorical style that was used by people, rabbis and teachers who studied the law. And so for Paul, it does sound very legalistic and it can be hard to read. The Greek is difficult too. And that's why some of our sentences just seem awkward. So if you want to get the heart of Romans and you want to hear the heart and the message of Romans, I actually encourage you to find a Bible translation that basically has admitted we're not going to stick to this legalese. We're going to shorten Paul's sentences. We're going to shorten his thoughts, and we're going to make it in a more plain language. And so for me, that Bible reference and recommendation I would give to you is the Living Translation. That was also known years ago as the Good News Bible. Some of you may have that on your shelf. There's also a Bible translation by Eugene Peterson called The Message, and I find that to be very readable. So The Message, the New Living Translation, but if you have your Bible, like I do, my NRSV, they have really stuck to the Greek. And as difficult as this is, with the use of a lot of commas, they try really hard to keep that legalese voice of Paul, which I think is good. But if you're just trying to read this, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh my goodness. So let's just say you don't have a copy of the Living Translation at home, or the Good News Bible, or the Message by Eugene Peterson. Well, let me direct you to a website. It's called Bible Gateway. all one word, BibleGateway.com. And BibleGateway.com has all of the Bible translations you could ever possibly want. And you are able to, with the drop-down menu up at the top, you can type the word Romans, and then you can, using the drop-down, choose a biblical translation that you want to read it from. And so go ahead and choose the Message or New Living Translation. And then you can actually then read it online. So you don't have to buy anything, is what I'm trying to say. That will help make Romans more approachable. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm trying to keep these short, and there are just so many one-liners that Paul does in the book of Romans. But there was one that stuck out to me. And when those things happen, I know I preach about that. Oh, something stuck out at me, or something really challenged me. I do that all the time, I know. But this time, I know I've read this several times, but this phrase is in chapter 14, and it's verse 22. And I am using the NRSV, so I don't know how it looks in the New Living Translation or in the Message. I don't know. But chapter 14, verse 22, it says, the faith that you have, comma, have. The emphasis is on that word. The faith that you have, comma, have as your own conviction before God. So let me say that again all together. The faith that you have as your own conviction before God. I really like that. I really like that. Because Paul is not saying here, your faith is not good enough. Paul is not saying that. Paul is saying the faith that you have it. Have the faith that you have as your conviction before God, meaning have it. Have the faith that you have, and it's okay. And whether it is a faith that others may perceive to be super strong, or a faith that you perceive and feel may not be as strong as you want it to, or as you desire it to be, Paul is saying whatever faith you have. I found this to be so freeing, because some days faith is hard, and some days faith is not what you want it to be. And maybe you desire to have more faith and you're lacking a little bit, or maybe you have more faith in someone that you are with and you're feeling unbalanced with that person. Maybe someone has a lot of faith that you're with and you don't have the faith that they have. And when I say faith that you have and they have, I realize I'm speaking very metaphorically here, but I mean in terms of practice, in terms of belief, in terms of trust, in terms of activeness. Faith can mean all of these things. It can be just in the head, but it can also be what we do with our hands and our mouth and our bodies, and how we live this out. So for me to have Paul, who knew all that, who knew that faith was an active thing, and Martin Luther even said, faith is active, it's living, it's breathing, it's not something that's just here. Luther was very, very vocal about that. Paul is saying the faith that you have. I really like that. So for me, especially as I'm coming into Christmas and I'm coming into the end of the new year, and New Year's resolutions are always something I do, having this word of comfort from Paul, even about having the faith that I have, is just, it's been helpful for me. And I hope it's been helpful for you. So take my advice, read Romans with a different translation, make it more approachable. And next time we do a Bible study on Romans, join us because Romans has to be unpacked uh, chapter by chapter. It's not something I can just quickly gloss over and just summarize in one sentence. So, but I will tell you that the doctrine of the church is heavily built in Romans. And that legalese language, though, really kind of go back from reading more and more of it. So do what you can to learn what you can from Romans. And yes, my friends, have the faith that you have and have it before God. Until we meet again next time, I wish you much blessings and much peace.